So while we're getting some of the equipment fired up and moving things around, the game plan for this video is this truck, the engine's locked up, it got water into the cylinders, and the transmission has maybe 2 out of 4 gears on a good day. So I've got a engine and a transmission out of a different truck. It's a 5-speed, we'll drop into it. And then there's a few other things. There's brakes, it needs a steering box, have to figure out a PTO situation, and a drive shaft, which shouldn't be too big of a deal. So putting everything back together and getting it going will probably be in separate videos, and this one's just going to be tearing things out mostly. So hope you enjoy.
Okay, this old truck got quite a bit of history to it. I think beginning it belonged to a landscaper down in St. Louis, and this friend of mine bought it in the late 90s or mid 90s. The truck was originally 4 foot longer than it is right now, and my friend, his brother was a real good welder mechanic. In fact, he worked on rebuilding cat dozers and things like that. He could do about anything, and he took 4 foot out of the frame, which is the length this is of the power takeoff or the drive shaft on it. Well, normally these trucks were, a dump truck like this with a 10-foot bed had a 84 cabbed axle wheelbase. Well, this one turned out to be 83. This really bothered my friend, and that's what happened to it. And well, anyway, so and then they found this dump bed over in West Quincy at a salvage yard, and it had been underneath the '93 Mississippi flood because it flooded that whole area. And anyway, so they put it on this truck, and the truck then had a 366 with a 4-speed in it, and 2-speed axle, which it served its purpose for quite a while. And this friend of mine, he really didn't need the truck, and he just let us keep it here, and we ran the thing. We probably hauled many a load with it, and I don't know if he ever hauled more than 10 loads his whole life with the truck, you know. And then eventually his health failed him, and he asked me if I wanted to buy it. I really couldn't turn him down because we had been using it for 20 years. So he sold me this truck and another truck that were basically the other truck he sold me. The plan is to put that engine and 5-speed into this truck. And this truck hasn't run for probably 3-4 years now. It probably would have been a simple thing to fix it, because this other mechanic said, well, it had a water leak, and he said, well, just put new head gaskets on it. And we never did that. And then one day, I think the water must have gotten to the block, and we tried to pull it, and then from then on the motor locked up, and the transmission is not real good, because for a while there I could only run in, I think, third gear. About second gear, or one of those gears wouldn't work. You had to, if you got on a hill and you took off in third gear, you pretty well had to run it through the country home from the rock quarry, because you didn't know if it was going to shift or not. But then all at once it was cured, and it worked pretty good after that. But anyway, this is kind of a project that my grandson, I talked him into doing it over Thanksgiving, so we'll kind of see what happens. One good thing about this old truck, it's got that, it's like a 1976, and it's got that tilt cab. So if you take all that off of it, I'm hoping we can pull the whole motor and transmission out, I think, without having to disassemble anything. And hopefully we can put this other motor, also has a 5-speed with it, and we can put that back in there without having to take it apart. So the other truck I'd driven, the other truck, it's got a good motor and transmission in it. But we kind of stripped it down at another place, and actually the whole front end was put underneath another truck. So right now, and I'm also planning to take the rear end of that one and put under my grain trucks so we can put cheaper tires on it. Right now you got these 900 tires that came with are fairly expensive when you try to put the tubeless 21 5s or whatever they are on that other truck. And so that's our plan. Now whether if that happens, it wouldn't be for Matthew. But he's going to kind of bring it back to life. I know it runs. The old truck looks kind of rough, but my friend, he basically put a new seat in it. So it's got a good seat, but it's got a hole in the floorboard here. But it hadn't been run for quite a while. But it's a good running truck. So
yeah. So we're gonna get this chained up, and then we'll get it in the shop. So kind of when we're getting this pushed in maybe one of the least efficient ways possible, the first thing that we're going to do is we'll pop the hood off. It's just fiberglass. So you drive the 2 pins out that are the hinge pins right on the front, kind of beneath the nose of the hood. And then there's 2 springs with cables and a wiring harness. So once you pop all those loose, you take the hood off. So we got the hood off. Next thing I'll be doing, I'm gonna drain all the fluids out. You all really don't need to see that, pretty simple. But here's what's gonna be going back in it. So the engine in the truck right now, as Grandpa said earlier, it's a 366 big block, so a tall deck. But right now the truck has GM made a 4-speed manual from I think 68 to 91. But this here's a Clark 5-speed. So it should have a 1-to-1 final, and then it has a working 4th or a working 5th like they call it. It'd be the same transmission as in that other video that Grandpa was talking about how to shift. So the PTO should work between the 2 of them, and we'll get draining fluids and throw it in. Here we're just pulling the radiator off. It's just 2 bolts at the bottom with a little rubber isolation mount, and then the 2 long straps at the top. Comes right off. Okay, so we got the radiator off, and now I'm just gonna start just whipping. Take the accessories off, we'll get the carburetor off, and then I'll probably just do that as a time lapse or something, just because there's not much to say about it. Do it. So first of all, fan off, and then go to the alternator and the belt, power steering, the 2 lines at the bottom, and then all the bolts. Pops right off with the bracket, take some belts off, get the carburetor off. And that's just 4 bolts like any other one, and then you gotta pop all the linkages and springs off. And that's about it. Okay, so I've got most of the accessories off, or all the accessories I need to take off. I've still got the fuel line there, and then I'm gonna have to take the headers off, which this truck actually has sort of a shorty style header on it. Not quite a true shorty because it's not the same as the stock manifolds, but pretty close to it. So we'll work on getting those zipped off, and then I will start figuring out how to chain up to this motor, and then we'll go under it, take the drive shaft off, take the parking brake cable off, take the PTO off, and then we'll be pretty close to pulling the motor out. So for these exhaust manifolds, first I got the pipes off under the truck, which was easy because thank God it's a farm truck, so the exhaust hangers are number 9 wire. And actually all the bolts on the end of the headers on the flanges came out, which is a great surprise. And as you can see, all the bolts are coming out pretty well. Nothing like if you've ever worked on a Ford Triton or anything like that where they all want to break off. These all kind of just made their way out. So that side actually came off. I'm not going to say the E word. Anybody that's worked on anything knows that, but each one of the bolts came out. So I assume whoever put those headers on put some anti-seize on there or something, but either way, I really appreciate it. So we'll get moved over to the other side and give it the same treatment. Came off too, so we'll come over here. I will probably pop that fuel pump off. Then I'll get the starter out of the way and we'll peel some of this wiring harness back off of the motor. Starter's just the 2 wires, and you've got the 3 bolts. One of them comes in from the back. They're all 9/16. The bottom one you kind of have to get under the truck with a wrench and do, which you're going to want to be anyways because the starter's heavy enough. You don't want to drop it, and I don't know if the starter break or it'd crack your concrete, but you'd figure out pretty quick. That's just those 3 bolts and the wires. I'm going to try to take this front bumper off just because it's 4 bolts, and getting it out of my way will make life a lot easier. As far as then I can kind of get back in the wheel well a little more, so we'll give that a go. I really wish I would have taken this bumper off at the start. It would have made getting to a lot of that stuff significantly easier, but you live, you learn. I honestly figured the bolts for the bumper would have been completely seized in, just because, I mean, they're pretty big bolt and they're tight, but 3 of the 4 bolts out. The last one's stubborn, so it's gonna get cut off with a torch. And I'm not wearing safety glasses, but I'm gonna squint pretty good.
Time I bit hard into a marble ashtray, thinking it was a savory waffle. I wanted that waffle so bad. Completely shattered my teeth.
Couldn't you tell the ashtray wasn't hot like a waffle?
No, I couldn't, because I'm blind. I'm not blind 23 hours a day or 22 hours a day. I'm blind the whole goddamn time.
I could let you use mine. They're I'll tell them how to do that. How to make, how to run the short.
You turn the acetylene on until it stops smoking. And then you take your oxygen on until that blue flame is right up by it. And you're about where you want to be. Then you're ready to cut.
Bumped the straw on Grandpa and lost 2 toes. This here.
I'll do it. And yeah, so there's bumper off, and then I'll be able to kind of get right here in the corner, reach some more stuff. That'd be a bumper hitting the ground. Harness off. Pretty much everything up front off that needs to come off. So next I'm going to try to get under there, and we'll get the PTO off, a couple cables, do the take the drive shaft off too. See how well I can film it. I'm not sure if it'll work out, but we'll give it a shot. So here I'm popping the PTO off. It's lever actuated, that goes up in the cab. All these PTOs are SAE patterns, so you just have to find the right PTO with the right pattern and then the right gear and throw it on your transmission, which might be the problem we run into. And then next, the cable, I end up cutting it. It's for the parking brake. I'm gonna have to install a different kind of parking brake, so cutting the cable won't be an issue. The PTO off. Well, you've got it on the ground here. And as you can see, these aren't straight cut on this one. On the one that came off the same transmission from a different truck are straight cuts. We might have to, I don't know, end up swapping some gears around or use a different PTO. But I'll tell you what, the clutch pivot is an absolute pain. So if you end up doing this, just be prepared. It's back in there, but once you figure out how to get at it, it's really not, it's not terrible. Got the PTO off, like I said. Now I've got the drive shaft off and that the clutch pivot. So I'm gonna come in here and we'll take the little splitter selector button. We'll pop that off, and then I'll get the that pan off the floorboard so I can get the shifter out. Getting the pan off, it's straightforward. There's just a ring of bolts all the way around it. Other than the little bit of a Asian beetle infestation, there's nothing too complicated here, and this is pretty standard no matter what you're working on. That rubber boot and the splitter button off. I'll just have to take, there's a couple bolts left in this plate. There's a nice foot-sized hole there. So Grandpa says he's got a piece of metal we can try to patch over that. I don't know how much other good metal there is to screw into, but we'll see what happens. Okay, so now we gotta get the shifter out. I'll show you how to do it. I had to look up how to do it. I almost thought you had to take the whole top of the transmission off, but which wouldn't make any sense. But it's actually pretty simple, according to the video, if it works. Take that little clamp off, and then okay, need to get this. Okay, so you're supposed to be able to push this tin shield down. First, I'm gonna scrape some of that junk off of it. Working on new stuff is one thing, but when it's like this and everything's covered in grease and rust, and it's a whole different ball game. So you're supposed to be able to push this down and turn it left like 1/8 of a turn, and then pops out. Everything is pulled off. Now we've just got to get it wiggled out of there. So on the front, you have two motor mounts right there. And on the sides of the transmission, if you see right behind the starter there, there's that kind of foot or pad, you call it. And there's 2 bolts that go vertically up into it. So I got those out. It's just resting here. We're gonna use chain and then a loader tractor, and we'll pop it out. Okay.
Turn the wheels hard this way. Back out.
So we got it pulled out, and then so we got it pulled out. We're gonna go, this one's pretty well scrapped. I'll probably pull a couple parts off of it just in case, I don't know if I ever want them. Harmonic balancer looks good, and I'll take this front mount and then maybe the water pump housing. But other than that, it's all cast iron to get scrapped. So, and then this will be one video, and then the next video will be me putting the engine in, and then there's a few other random things. I've got to change out this this power steering gearbox, and then I've got to get the brakes working on it. I'm pretty sure it's a master cylinder, but we'll find out when we get there.